Oh my. Welcome back to Divas, Diamonds, and Dollars podcast. We empower career women, business owners, and late bloomers with the tools and strategies for living a bolder, fuller life. Each week, we talk business, leadership, and personal finance. So you don't just survive, you thrive. We are your hosts, Larisa Troche and
I am Cecilia Benford.
well, there a minute. I was going to say is as a reminder. I guess it is a reminder. This is our second episode. This month, we are exploring building blocks for boldness, essentially lessons and the right levers to pull for the desired outcome with bold impacts. So, what does it take to create a daring persona in a world full of distractions, choices, and frankly, noise? Right?
Mhm.
There's so much going on vying for our attention.
Yes.
So I will say that when we consider those who have become before us, and you know, don't do that very often, but sometimes we do, leading the way with courage, stamina, and empowerment, what are the tools that they have at their disposal that we need to embrace? Do you ever ask yourself that question? So when you look at their backstory, you probably find that they are not much different from us. So this is a good time to ask, why not me? My favorite question. Why not me? Gets me in a whole lot of trouble, but I sure do keep trying because why not me?
Mm.
So let's explore what makes women of impact, frankly, so powerful.
So you did lay that out pretty well. And, it's really thought-provoking. And so when you said what you said, actually, I was taken back to, I caught the end of a basketball game, and I thought it was just a regular basketball game, but it's actually a pioneer. That's what they called it, pioneer series or what they were going to do. And truly, it is about those who had gone before. So they had a couple representatives, like family members of somebody who had played before. And so there was a young man talking, and he really took this to heart. And I really liked what he said about not only those who had gone before, but how he could use it going forward and how he could help others. So perfect, perfect backdrop. It really made me think. And so I said, you would think we need another basketball, something, if you will. It could have been anything, baseball or whatever, but I was struck by the thoughtfulness that went into this to think about those pioneers. Go ahead. So with that, that leads me to the next point. Long before influencer was a meme, see, young people probably think they invented that word or think this just all happened right now. But we know that we grew up admiring and learning from mentors and even mentors we didn't necessarily call out, right? We didn't even necessarily call out role models. But we have since learned that's indeed what they were and are and who we have been. So we've learned from mentors and role models who display certain characteristics and style. And I embrace all of this so much so that I just use these words in my Sunday class yesterday about what we need to do to others. And so it is about our characteristics, it is about our style. And so these people provided us with inspiration. And some of us, kind of said, well, where do we get this from? Right. So this is all relevant. People don't just magically appear and they are. It really isn't quite like that. So as we think about the inspiration and hope that they provided about how things could be, and we used to think, hey, if we're lucky, look what we could be and what we could become. And so that was really sort of the takeaway, because maybe somebody didn't necessarily talk to you, but you saw them, you admired them, whether close up or from afar. We're like, wow, one day I'm going to be them, right? So today, let's investigate three of the tools they used and which are accessible to us as well. First, visibility, leadership, and impact. you're not influencing somebody if there's no impact, right? So let's jump in. So I want to deal first with the word visibility. Being bold does involve being seen. Okay, so we may not use the word introverts out there anymore, but I can speak for myself. I used to be an introvert. I would be probably, if I was putting a label on myself, an introverted thought person. Always thinking, I always had ideas, I always was working in my head. However, the good news is the type of visibility that we're discussing is primarily being known outside of your circle of family and friends and coworkers. And I kind of want to throw in the thought that when we say being known outside of your family, friends, and coworkers, if you're out anywhere, there's a camera, right? And so we see what happens with cameras. So I think that's important because when we talk about bold moves, it touches those of our larger communities that we know about or that maybe our people know about. But then there are also communities that we seek. So consider the word visibility. What are we talking about? Messaging is very important. And so your message provides information, support, influence, and inspiration. Keywords, information. What information do I want to deliver, truly want people to understand and know? Does it support anybody? Support anything? How about influence? Does it influence someone? Because remember, we want this to lead to a greater impact, right? Which, of course, leads us to inspiration. At the end of the day, when we hear messages and if we walk away inspired, I would say that message was received, right? So carefully hone your words, what you're thinking about that you want to communicate. You think before you deliver your message. I think sometimes it'd be great if a lot of people would truly seem like they were thinking or had thought about what they wanted to say before they said it. Timing is always important. And so we may initially not know about, the timing, but it is something, we're giving you steps. So we want this to be a carefully thought out process, right? Not just something that happened. So the often used sentiment that when the student is ready, the teacher will show up. Yeah, think about that as a two-sided coin. While you are on your Kaizen journey of continual improvement, you two have a role as teachers for others. Um, Today, remember I just said the word community. Today, many are speaking about what we can do for others. What do we bring to the table for others? And so it is something that is going to have the biggest takeaway in making your bold move. All right. Consider who is searching for you. You never know. So we had a friend over the other day, and this guy, well, he actually was visiting my husband, but I showed up in towards the end of their conversation, and he asked me how was our podcast going. And so, surprising question, but my husband later asked me, "Well, how do you know you have a podcast?" I said, because he told me one day, "Hey, I looked you up and you're all over the place." I was like, "Oh, okay." So again, you have to think about what you're doing, who's searching for you. And a lot of times, just think about when you're surfing or looking for something, how many times do you stumble upon somebody? I know I do. I do. Um, and you get information, you learn about somebody, you say, "Oh, I want to follow that person," right? So, whatever somebody is looking for, Sometimes it's just your name, but sometimes it's knowing that you have a product or that you have a service or, um, what are you doing with your time? Sometimes people just want to know that too. Maybe being a little nosy, I'm not sure. But anyway, the world is open, ready and waiting for you. So this is your time. We control our time. I still hear a lot of people somewhat fearful about what they can do, but no, this is your time. This is your time. Audience, your audience is your tribe. Yes, your audience is your tribe. And when I say that, I feel like, don't you feel the word responsibility tied to that? Here's your tribe. You gather and mold and shape and influence them. So whether they are an existing part of your persona or they are approaching you. One of the things I was sharing yesterday was really about, hey, our young people, how do we bring them into the fold? Why do we need to have the young people coming behind us, right? So that could be your people you are approaching. Who do you serve or want to serve? Uh, the bottom line is you want to be visible wherever your tribe is. And today you have to find out whether you have to be really both online and in person. That's the first thing. But how do you assess certain tools to do that? There's certainly more ways than one. So include some manner of accessibility in your offerings and make it known to others. All right. So then the next thing is leadership. Yeah, we do talk a lot about leadership on our podcast. Why? Because it's important, super important. I think that you think about today, at least I think about it a lot. Wow, without too much example, you do know the examples of great leadership, but too far and away, there are those who don't exhibit great leadership. And people are looking at that and deciding, okay, what type of leader, one, do I want to be? And two, people who used to be leaders who seem to be backing up, not able to take a stand, right? So, what camp do you want to be in? That's the one that I speak to a lot because, but with you can't help but reflect on where we are and the influence not just in your own backyard, but really even across the world because we are connected, we are global citizens. And so who we are, what makes up our everything we talk about and even our bold moves that we want to be about. It's very multifaceted. It's just not a singular thing. So think about how you want to lead somebody. So when you do that, first and foremost, you must be self-aware. Again, I'm sort of thinking about people who just speak and say things. And then sometimes you see people, they're standing behind a podium and they seem to have a script. But what happens? All of a sudden, the script starts unraveling. So do they lose their self-awareness? It's just sort of a funny thought, but I'm making the image so that you'll think about that. You have to think about what you have going for yourself, not what somebody else, you don't want to be somebody else. You want to be you. And have some introspection about who you are and what you're about. How we make decisions helps us respond to everything that's swirling around us. And we know the winds are swirling around us. Like recently, we talked about the noise and the chaos. All of that's going on, but we don't want to, be going back and forth and saying anything and doing anything. So be aware of what your feelings are, what your thoughts are, how you're going to respond or not. How about self-discipline? I see a lot of this, and I mean, sometimes whether it's professionals in a game, somebody's making a speech, somebody is giving an award, and you just think, my goodness, couldn't they control their actions and what they said before they did? Now, some things are intentional. Okay, there's good and bad intentionality, but so obviously we're talking about bold intentionality. Okay. So harness what that looks like for you and what you're trying to groom and improve and get bigger in the limelight, right? People can remember you, but do you want them to remember the bad behavior? I hope not. I don't want nobody to remember my bad behavior or embarrassing moment, right? So self-leadership, aka self-discipline, they're one and the same. So what do you want that to look like? It does require that focus, practice, consistency over time. Who you are really stands out, and people can say things to you, but you're not going to be moved. You're not going to be impacted unnecessarily, negatively. But at the same time, I say to others, I'm always learning. I want to listen. I want to hear. Think of other ways to do things. So it doesn't mean that we're not doing that. It's just be disciplined in the process. Okay. So finally, the last thing about leadership, self-mastery. If you do all the things that we're talking about and you still haven't mastered something, well, something might be a little off there, right? Some maybe you're just not feeling the big bold movement. Maybe you're just being a little complacent. That's not what we're talking about. Self-mastery is truly, it's like art. It's like designing. It's like making something better. It's like making something bigger sometimes. It's about honing your craft. So it is a deep topic. A lot of times, I know in preparation for this particular episode, I had a lot of thoughts. I mean, remember I used the word reflection earlier. A lot of reflective thoughts about, okay, how do I do things? Because things will change for you. For me personally, I'm in a time. This time makes me have to rethink some things about how I want to, spend my time for impact. And I also have to respond to a spiritual side of me as to what that looks like. Um, so my sister coined this delicious definition, which includes knowing oneself so well that our external expressions are congruent with our internal concepts of who we are. She coined it, but I 100% agree with that. I feel like a lot of people don't know what that looks like. There's a situation been dealing with personally, and I'm just thinking about a person that I've watched over the years, and it's kind of up and down. Great brain, great ideas, but then there's the other part. So, okay. Anyway, this allows us to always show up as our authentic selves to the world at large. I feel it's a trust factor when we're trying to have these big, bold moves. When people come up to you or you establish this relationship with your tribe and what have you, they come to you because they trust you. If they can't trust you, then, some other things are, go astray. So, what do these have to do with being more influential? Well, an offshoot might be the old quote saying, physician, heal thyself. So, as a multipreneur, influence, lead yourself. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself, right? So, sounds a little messy, but it's true.
You know, when we mentioned the self-awareness, self-discipline, and so on, I there's a lot to that, and I will just throw out that I was on the treadmill and doing that's my learning plan is on the treadmills, read those
Mm,
newsletters. That where I'm not going to touch any other time unless I'm like nowhere else to go. And I used to say that some of my best ideas came from my open air office when I was out walking.
mm,
And it's different when I'm on the treadmill. I'm usually just listening to music, so I'm probably not thinking any great thoughts. But like I said, this time I was reading, and one thing that came up was Archimedes and Greek, one of the great Greek science
well,
minds. There we go. Let me spit that out. Anyway, so what he came up with, well, I'm paraphrasing three times over from Archimedes, the article, the interpretation, right? Is rest. The brain is actively working, even though, okay, you're working, you're thinking, you're doing your job, your business, your profession, and you're hustling. And maybe you can't, that problem doesn't come to you until you are in the quiet time, which is why I
mhm,
think that my quiet hour or quiet walking really was why I was getting so many good, I say so many good ideas. They're good ideas to me. Okay, okay. So, and then of course, modern times extrapolate, there is science behind it. I guess that's what I was saying, is I just wanted to just point out how we do things and we're not really aware. And then we get that scientific confirmation that yes, that is a thing, right? You didn't just make it
mhm,
up. But they had an acronym, of course, for the brain is actively working on the creative inputs that you give it. It is not stagnant or stationary or inactive. So they use rest, right? Random episodic. All right. Let read our handwriting. Random
mhm,
episodic silent thinking. But anyway, I thought that was just I appreciated that confirmation. And so your self-awareness, self-discipline, I think a lot of that builds while you're in the quiet time. That's where I was actually going with that. And so my office time or my open air office, my walking, that could have been why I felt so stuck because I had an injury. We'll call it we call it Achilles tendonitis or something or other. So I haven't been walking as much and I was really getting a little cloudy in there. And I bet that's why.
mm,
Okay, so bringing it on home to our final bold move for more influence is impact over image. How about that? You get 3 whole seconds to make an impression, good or bad,
mm,
and 3 seconds is all you get. So, what is your image saying? Does it invite people to lean in and listen, or will
mm,
people step back, or worse, walk away without hearing anything you have to say? So it's just, it sounds shallow that people
mm,
judge us by how we look, but shallow or not, I think there's some fact behind that. People will make those impressions. So you really want to, I think you need to have a care, right, in your presentation so that you can deliver. And I'll say that, for example, there was a movement this weekend, and I happened to catch the Becoming documentary with Michelle Obama and for her book tour. And I will say that to this point, for example, she gave a presentation or a speech before a crowd of dignitaries, and despite the power of her words, media, they only talked about what she was wearing and what she looked like.
mhm, mm,
Don't get me
mm,
started. And so
mm. Right.
that was, I'll say, at least one of many reasons, because there was a lot going on there. That she decided to put more attention, and not to say she didn't dress well before, but she needed to put more attention on the details on her attire and the presence for public appearances because people, right? But anyhow, so just kind of let that little nugget
Mm,
marinate there for a second. So let's talk about briefly your personal brand. And I will say that, so taking a page out of the First Lady's playbook, what can our version of purposeful attire look like? I said purposeful. How about that? We're just trying to get up and get out the house. Now we got to be purposeful.
mhm.
Jeez,
Ah,
the pressure.
ah,
I will just
ah,
say I happened to come across a YouTube video because I was multitasking, and It was a YouTube video. I don't know what the name of it was. Shame on me, but for women over 50, right? And what they talked about was the cut, the shape, and the color of your clothing, which
Mhm.
gives the impression of power, sophistication, elegance, whichever word you want to present. But I thought that was just very interesting because it wasn't about, wear pearls on Sunday or whatever, right? It was just looking because you could keep your own style, but look to the cut, the shape, and the color of your clothing because those are signals. I was going to say triggers, but they're signals to others. Hey, this woman's going places, and you're going places. So give that a thought. Anywho, so just as a gentle reminder, though, of course, personal branding is more than just your visuals. However, always remember it's what you portray consistently across all platforms and messaging. That's the point to take home, but unfortunately, you have to get people to see you before you can do the things. I didn't make that up, folks. Now, deliverability and charisma. Now, no matter how good you look, you must still deliver on the promise. So, we want you to, of course, choose your words carefully to ensure that you demonstrate, my favorite, it's a biggie, integrity. Honor and honesty speak volumes. People can tell if you're being shisty and or not. And I tend to back away talking about backing away, right? Insights.
Right.
People want your personal stories and learnings that invite others in. They want to
That's right.
say, well, I had that experience or I feel the same way. How can you share your insights and stories that, again, invite people to see the familiarity or, the connection? So think about that. And of course, your impact. Look, I don't think you're going to be very impactful. I was people who
Hmm.
don't speak up. Oh my gosh, I just kind of makes me get antsy. So a passion and a powerful message that elicits a visceral response. I say visceral. You've got to have that connection, and sometimes a more
Hmm.
powerful, strong connection gets you those results, and you know, that builds your community when people see, hey, it's my people up there talking, right? How do you represent that? So, just to wrap this up and bring her on home, how you can become, and I'm going to use the word more influential because I feel like you do have influence because you listen to this podcast.
Hmm.
So, listen, change and personal development begin with having a strong sense of self awareness, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, and creating a plan for growing and becoming while keeping an interactive eye on the world around us because you cannot put those blinders on. You have to protect yourself, but you need to be aware. That's all I have to say. And again, with the whole reading, Amara's Law, and I just wanted to share this because I think it has an impact, or again, with the science verification of how we respond to the world around us or how we think. Let's see. In 1978, futurist Roy Amara reflected that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. Now, naturally, of course, that makes me think of AI, but his conversation was about computers, right? People are just like, oh, this will never go anywhere. They're too big, they're too expensive, they're all the things.
Hmm.
Ta-da, in our back pocket. However, extrapolated by minds more brilliant than mine, this insight also speaks to the way people misjudge progress. Because we only anchor on what we see. Progress is
Hmm.
what we see when that's not actually how that works. Because
That's
some
right.
things that seem to be overnight, well, we know they didn't happen overnight, but it's just our
Hmm.
awareness. We anchor
Hmm.
on what's visible because we think linearly. It's like step one, step two, step three.
Hmm.
It's step one, step two, 18. All of a sudden, that's how it
Right,
happens.
right. Yeah.
So, too often, this is people, we expect instant gratification.
Hmm.
And I'm just going to invite you to remember that today's actions percolate beneath the surface for weeks, months, or years, and suddenly change occurs, progress is made. That speaks to all those overnight successes. So, anywho, that actually came, not, I said, extrapolated by more brilliant minds than mine, Sahil Bloom. He has a newsletter that he sends, and that's one that I actually read, and I highly recommend it. Anywho, so what this means for you, that's what does it mean for me? Change doesn't happen overnight. You will become more influential when you use these building blocks for boldness and keep doing the right things for the right reasons, and you will get the right results at the right time. Percolating.
All right, all right, all right. Wow, let me bring this home. So I was trying to, um, I saw something on the Grammy Award show. It was a commercial. You know, we bring out all these fabulous commercials. And I realized I was reading and I said, I need to pay attention because these are new, right? And sometimes it's a little tricky. You have to see something 3 or 4 times before you get it, right? But there was one thing that, and I was hoping I had marked it, but at the moment I don't quite see it. Or maybe I accidentally deleted it. But the they were I still call them tennis shoes, but athletic shoes or whatever. Um, Gem, tennis shoes, GEM. And so, and unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank on the actress that was there. I hadn't seen her in a while, who was interviewing this girl sitting on her stoop. And something had run over her new tennis shoes and or somebody, ran by and something. And anyway, and so, it's like the fairy godmother shows up. And a lot of times I think people think a fairy godmother is just going to show up, boom, and you're going to be instant success, right? And so, but the woman says, come on, and they get in the car and she asks her questions and shows her things. And to wrap this up really quickly, at the very end, she says the teenager or whatever says, I want it all. I thought it was really so what made me think about that, that's what we're talking about. You notice we never said you're limited. We say bolder moves. And if you think you want it all, you go after it. I remember thinking yesterday as I was watching the Grammys, I thought, oh my gosh, I said, I must be getting older because there were so many young people. I don't recall as many young people. So I heard something subsequent to that. So it made me feel better. No, I wasn't imagining it. It really is true. There were a lot more young people. And so somewhere they have said, I want it all. But if nothing else, they were excited. They couldn't believe they were on the stage of fame and being around new people. And yet you have the more like Carole King saying, this is still the best venue to bring out new artists and to celebrate those who have gone before. So it's another way, another outlet. Larissa and I both love all genres of music. And so while we may not be trying to, in fact, I know we're not trying to do a musical career, but you can see what they do. A lot of those people have spent a lot of time because one of the guys said, what are you supposed to do all the time? He said, work, work, and continue to work. And when you work on on your craft, you will get paid for what you love to do. So I also thought that was another great takeaway. So what does all this mean? We talked about visibility, we talked about leadership and impact. You can have all of those, being self-aware, being self-disciplined, and self-mastery. You need to figure out which one you want to do, which one you need to, well, which one needs more attention. But I really kind of thought about, well, if you want it all, maybe you need to work on all of it. So with that, um, pick one, work on it all, but build your diamonds power prompt and chat GPT for insights to build on. Larissa has mentioned this at the end each time, and she'll probably mention it again. But the point is, we're saying it's a discipline process. It's something you need to think about. It's something you need to focus on. It's something you need to work on. You need to build upon. So that is your action item, always the action item. Something that we don't have an audience that talks back to us, but you can leave comments it would be great to know how many people actually say, you know what, I followed and did these things, and this is what I'm doing today.
So I want to leave you with a Divalicious pro tip, and that is gentle persons ignore social media, algorithms, ads, and fads, all the noise of the shoulds. Make your bold moves based on your values, and goals. Go hard when you need to, but lean into the quiet times for the creativity to gel and come to life. And with that, next week, we'll expand on our building blocks for boldness conversation by talking about taking the stage, what you need to know to step up and step out confidently, and yes, boldly. See you there, divas. And I will just say, make sure you are subscribed. And if this episode resonated with you, do share it with a friend who is stepping out boldly this year. We will see you next time. Ciao.